Hello, and oh my goodness. Hello! Had a little technical problem there. Welcome to episode number 10. And today, my name is Torsten Tobel, if you don't know. Today, the conversation is going to be about the barriers we use to create our lives. And this kind of subject it popped for me just today, actually. And what I realized is that what I've been looking at in my life, and I see so many of us do this, is that we actually create our life around barriers. In fact, we use barriers to create our life, essentially. And I was starting to look at where I have barriers in my world. And if you're wondering what the heck I'm even talking about, it's like, okay, so right now, in this very moment, in this very space, would you be willing to put down your barriers? And it literally just is asking for your barriers to go down. As we move through life and be in this reality, a lot of times we actually go through life with our barriers up because that's essentially our default. It is this coping mechanism, and it's actually what we've been taught. We've actually been taught to protect ourselves. There's all this thing about protecting. And when you are protecting, you have to put up a barrier because you have to protect yourself from everything outside. Which is interesting because as soon as you do that, what do you also do? You essentially protect or put walls up against you too. So it's you and everyone else. And so you basically create this barrier from you to everything and everything to you. And so when you have these barriers up, it's really hard to connect with people because you're not actually willing to receive them. And really, that's all it is. It's really this willingness to receive everything. And we have this notion that if we receive judgment, if we receive intensity, that it's going to damage us, or we're going to get hurt, or something along that line, which isn't actually real. It isn't actually true. And if you allow yourself to receive everything and not actually buy it, as in to hold it or to stick it in your body or whatever, and you just receive it and allow it to go through you, you can receive anything. And it won't actually hurt you in any way. And it could even contribute to you in a really dynamic way that you've never even thought was possible. And it also, when you put up a wall and a barrier, you aren't allowing anyone to receive you. You aren't actually allowing you to be you, which is also a really interesting thing that we do a lot. And I really see this. And I'm not just talking about daily life, and I am talking about daily life, but it's not just through your everyday, but it is really in everything in your life, in your work, in how you interact with people, your family. It can even have a massive impact in the bedroom when you're with your partner or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it may be. It's this act of receiving that can create a totally different possibility in all aspects of your life. It can really, really change dynamically how you actually are with the world. And just through the simple fact of not having your barriers up and not putting up walls. And so I kind of want to play with this because when this came to me, when this showed up for me some years ago, it actually showed up through a video, which was really cool. And so the video, so I want to actually play with this exercise right now. So right now, put your walls up, put your barriers up, and just perceive that energy. And then put your barriers down, put the walls down, and then perceive that energy. And do you notice the difference? Do you notice the change in your world? And can you also perceive it and notice it in whoever's on this call, whether it's live or in the future? And so when this first showed up to me, I was super excited because I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I literally played with it and saw it on a video, and I'm like, time and space doesn't actually exist. I could perceive it in that moment, even though this came from a video that happened, at a different time. It wasn't live. And so this is what you can play with every day. This is something I do play with. And it's really about being in the space of like, where else can I just receive more? And am I willing to receive everything from everyone? And not judge it, whatever it may be. If someone has a point of view that they're projecting at you, what if you could just receive that projection and not make it right or not make it wrong? And even if that projection is really intense, what if you could receive that and again, not make it right or wrong? It just to be aware, oh, this is intense energy, thank you. And how much more ease would you have with the world and be in the world by showing up in that way? And if you've ever noticed, maybe when you're around somebody that's really intense and has a really intense projection, and it may not even be to you directly, it may be just in general, or they're in the room and someone is super mad or super intense or whatever, you notice it and the energy in the room shifts. And what a lot of people automatically do is put their barriers up because you're trying to block out that intensity that person's being in that moment. And so what if you didn't? What if you just lowered those barriers and you just received it and you just were being the space of you? And it's been something that I've played with actually yesterday. I was out shopping for some clothes and we were out eating in a food court, and there was this guy going around asking for money, and he was getting really frustrated and he was getting really intense and he was swearing quite loudly a few times. And so instead of buying into that world, I actually expanded out and I ended up being more space. And when you do that, it's really difficult to have your barriers and walls up. And so it's like, it's shifting the energy in your world and not buying into that intensity. And so I was aware of and receiving, but I wasn't buying it as real. And so I was really shifting in the way that I was willing to be in that space, and I wasn't going to put up my barriers, and I wasn't willing to put up walls. And then the guy just left, actually. So it was interesting just to see what showed up. And it's really fun to play with that. And that's kind of something that I chose to play with yesterday. And it's just different things that you can do. But it's really interesting that we actually create. And so when we actually create from these walls and barriers, you can only create from an extreme amount of limitation because you don't have access to everything. You're literally cutting yourself off. And so, and that's really where the questions come in. And so it's like, well, how do I create beyond the barriers? How do I create by not putting up barriers? Well, one thing, every time you look to create something, ask yourself to lower your walls and barriers and see if there's a difference. Pay attention and notice, sense, do I have walls and barriers up? And it may be a question that you actually want to ask throughout the day. Maybe it's a question that you're asking, every few minutes. Set a timer and play with it. And every single time the timer goes up, ask yourself to lower your walls and barriers and see what shows up. And so as you start playing with this, and what I've been noticing is being more this, whenever you are the space of the question, it's really difficult to actually have walls and barriers up. So it's also about asking the question, whatever question you want to play with. I like to ask, what else is possible? Some people like to ask, how does it get any better than this? And it's just having some questions that you always play with and always show up. And it's something that really just gets you in the space of possibility and in the question, and it really allows you to be connected with everything and not have any separation at all, not be in separation, whether it is with yourself or whether it is with your body or whether it's with people or whether it's with, it can be all kinds of places that we do it with. It can be things that we have separation with. Maybe your computer isn't working well, so you get really mad at it. You're basically creating separation with it. I mean, there's so many different ways that we do that. And so it's really playing, and it is this play. It is this play to see what else is possible. What else is possible to show up that you never ever considered was possible? And so I'm going to share a little story that it gives a really small example, because it's really about the actualization. It is about the process of actualization. And it is about being in the question. And one of the things that I've been playing with, and one of the things that gets me excited, is electric cars. And my favorite is the Tesla Model S. And in my world, I know that will show up at some point. And so I've been asking a lot lately and playing with it and looking at possibilities. And there was a used one that showed up here in Vancouver recently, and the price went down. I was sort of looking at it. Anyways, in doing that, it is actually a real possibility in this moment of possibly getting it in a linear kind of way, which is really interesting because I know there are so many other possibilities. But it's really showing up in this space of like, what else is possible? Like, I really know something else can shift, and I really know something else is possible. And it's fun when you start seeing that start to actualize. And that's what happened this morning, was this small piece of actualization. I'm like, this is actually quite doable, like really doable. And so there's more questions to be asked and some other things to be looked at to make it happen. And it's really from that space of like, whereas before in my life, when I was looking at it, I did have a separation. I did have a wall up. It was like, that's always been, that possibility has only ever been in the future for me. And that shifted recently. And it's funny, since that shifted, which was only about a week or two ago, things have been showing up different. And so it's also looking at all the places in your life where you look at the impossibilities, where you're like, yeah, I like that, but it's not possible for me, or it's not real for me, or it could never be for me, or maybe sometime in the future. And so you always keep it in the future, which I've been amazing at doing. I'm really good at keeping things just in the future. And it's something that I'm aware of. So I'm like, cool, like I know the possibilities and I'm keeping all these things in the future. So what would it take for me to bring them into the present? And so one of the awarenesses that I had is I'm going to start doing an energy pull every morning, and I'm actually going to do a 30-day energy pull starting next week, which I'm really excited about. And so what's interesting is that as I started going, okay, so if I didn't have this barrier up, if I didn't have this conclusion that it only can be in the future, what else is possible? And then I was also looking at, and one of the clearings that's been showing up a lot in Access lately is whose lies and what lies have you bought to create X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. And I've really been looking at that, and I'm like, wow, I realize how many lies I've bought, how many things that aren't actually true that I've bought from people and myself, and all the the places that we are told certain things that aren't possible for most people. And I'm just like, and I just bought them without actually ever asking a question. Is that actually true for me? Is that actually true for anyone? Not just me. Is that just a lie that we've been told that we've bought that keeps us limited, that keeps us not actually showing up as who we truly be, the expansive being that we are? And it's like, and when you start looking at that and you're like, oh, that actually isn't real. I've just made it real. And so it's like, it's another way of the places that we create barriers. We create this wall, like, I'd like that, but it can only be in the future. Or I like that, but I can't have that. That can't show up in my life. It can only show up in, this person's life, which is totally insane too. But it's really interesting to see how much we do that. And I notice I do it actually quite a bit. And it's really fun to be aware of all the places that I do it. And so I'm really just talking about this to give a sense of, how insane we actually are through what we just assume we can't change. And there is literally almost nothing that we can't change. We can change just about everything if we're willing to not have a conclusion that it isn't possible. That we actually look at it with the question of like, okay, so if this was possible, what would have to change? What would have to be different? What would I maybe have to do or be different for it to show up? And the being part is really, really important. It's as important as the doing. But being a different space, not putting the automatic conclusion and barrier up to something of like, no, that isn't possible. I can't do that. It's like, well, what if you could? What if you could do it? What would show up then? And if you actually started looking at that about everything in your life, instead of automatically going, oh, that isn't possible for me. It may be possible for other people, but not for me. What if that wasn't actually true? And as you start looking at this, it's like, what I've noticed too is that I've had this weird idea that, I don't even know how to say this actually, but there's been something in my world where there's some aspect of allowing people to contribute to me that I haven't really allowed people to do that. It's this insane control of like having to create everything on your own in some sort of way. Yet I know that's not true, and actually I really like to create with people. It's really fun for me. I really get a lot of joy out of it, actually, creating with other people. And because I also realize that when you do add other people's energy to yours, it creates something different. It's not just you anymore. It's your energy and someone else's and someone else's and someone else's and someone else's. And what does that create? And that gets really, really fun. And it's really fun to play with that. Yet I still have this place where I go to sometimes of this insanity of like, it's good, and then maybe, and then I stop it. And that's when you create another barrier, another wall, which isn't real. It's not actually solid in any sense. You just make it that. And what's really cool when you start looking at the way that we create is that if you looked at just that, if you looked at all the places that you stop yourself, and if you didn't judge it as wrong and you looked at it as a brilliance, how brilliant you are at creating all these barriers and walls and roadblocks for yourself, like, it is genius. It is like impressive to be able to do that, because it takes so much energy. And in order to create anything, any sort of barrier, any sort of stopping point, you actually have to slow energy down. So to slow energy down from what it's actually creating is a lot of work. It's way more work than just letting it go. And so when you start looking at the world through that point of view, from that perspective, it's like, if you can see all the places that you've been stopping yourself, and you can see all the different places that you've been buying things that aren't true for you, and that you've actually held them all into place, that is a massive, massive quality and gift. And that is so not easy to keep going consistently, because it takes so much effort to do that. A tremendous amount of effort. And if you're sitting here and going, yeah, okay, maybe not. I don't think it takes that much. It's pretty easy, man. I just whatever. But think about a situation that was like really intense in your life, wherever it may have showed up. And suddenly you came to a place where you didn't care anymore, or you just let go. And there was this massive sense of relief. And it was like the world had been taken off of your shoulders. And I know that everyone has actually experienced something like that in their life at some point. And so go back to that place, or go forward to that place, whatever it may be, and have a recall of that situation. And when you recall it, you actually know what it's like to let go of the resistance, let go of actually holding something that isn't true in place. And when you let go of it, it is a total relief, because you're no longer having to keep that energy, and you're no longer having to keep whatever that was that wasn't true in place. And when you don't, it creates ease in your world. And it creates this space and this, like, it's almost like the world just opened up. And you maybe only experience that for a short moment, but you still experience it. And you know what that's like. And so what if you could do that with every single place that you are aware of in this 10 seconds that you're not allowing yourself to be all of you, that you are holding something in place, that you're keeping a barrier, a block, a point of view, whatever it is. And so if you started looking at all the places, you'd be like, wow, how much is actually available to me? Like, there is a tremendous amount of you that you are not allowing to be. And how much fun could it be? What if you could turn this into a game of like, okay, so I wonder how many places I can see, become aware of, that I'm blocking myself, all these places that I have put up barriers, all these places that have created separation. What if you could make it a game and see how many you can find play with it. Maybe like, okay, so how many can I become aware of in an hour? How many can I be aware of in a day? And like, if you want to make it like real, you could even write down a piece of paper and write an hour or write the day. And each time you become aware of something, you actually write it down. And the simple act of acknowledging what you've been doing, that alone can create so much more space in your world. And so there's all these things that you can do. I know I do this all the time. So when I start looking at these things, I'm like, oh my God. First place I go is I make myself wrong. I'm like, man, I'm doing so bad. I have all these blocks and barriers that I've been preventing myself from creating what I really, truly want to create. God, I'm terrible. I'm such an idiot. I'm stupid, wherever. And that's where I go. That's the default. And I know I talked about this particular thing last week, and I will bring it up because it is so amazing. And I have been playing with it more and more and more this week too, is the question of what's right about me that I'm not getting. That has been like crazy, crazy fun to play with. And so looking at all these places and turning into a game, it's almost like you trick yourself into not going into the wrongness of you and just seeing how you can look at this in a different way and how much space you can create with looking at like, wow, so I wonder how many barriers I can discover that I've been creating today. And you wake up with that every morning and you're like, okay, so today I wonder how many I can become aware of. And so you're not automatically making yourself wrong for this. You're just choosing to be aware. You're just choosing to see what you can discover about yourself and see really what else is possible for you. And for the beginning part, I would definitely recommend playing this game just for you, just for fun. Don't tell anyone, because maybe not everyone is going to be on board with playing this game or even telling anyone that you're playing this game. Like, I would really play with this on your own. And if there's some people in your life that you totally know have your back and that would, be fun to play with and that could add to creating this with you, then I would look at it, but I definitely just play with this one on your own and see what shows up and share what shows up and really see what else is possible and see where else you can go beyond the barriers. It's really going beyond the barriers, and these barriers that we've created are really just created in this reality. We are so much more. It's amazing the capacities that we all have, that every single person watching this has. We have amazing capacities. And what if we could start discovering some of them? And what if just looking at where we've been putting up walls and barriers is part of the uncovering of that? And what else is possible when we start playing in a different way? And how much fun can you have? And really, this is where you get to actually have fun. You get to be you. You get to be the insanity that you truly be. And what if you embrace that and you got to see the true insanity that you've been choosing? And then you can choose something else, and again and again and again and again and again. And so what else is possible? What's right about me that I'm not getting? Where are all the barriers that I've been creating so I can change them and choose something else? and play with that and see what shows up. And comment if you feel like it, of what has changed in your world. Because I love actually hearing when people play with the tools and all the amazing things that they create with them, and the amazing beings that you are, and really playing with the tools gets you to see what you truly be and how amazing you are and what you actually can create in the world. And how else can we change this world and make it something that is way, way more enjoyable to play with than it currently is? What if we could go so far beyond what we ever imagined possible? That's kind of where I'd like to play. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again next week. Might be a different time. I got a class that I'm teaching, so it might be a day earlier, but I'll let you know. Thanks for hanging out. Have an awesome week. Bye.